Have you ever paused to consider how World War I reshaped our world? As the dawn of the 20th century broke, humanity stood on the precipice of unprecedented turmoil. The world was in disarray, a complex chessboard of nations, each driven by a potent mix of burgeoning nationalism and militarism. This fervor was further complicated by a tangled web of alliances, a delicate dance of diplomacy and strategy that was all too easily upset. In this volatile atmosphere, the spark of conflict was inevitable. Countries, once bound by peaceful treaties, found themselves on opposing sides of a global conflict. A conflict that would redefine borders, shift global power balances, and leave an indelible mark on the face of our history. Thus, the stage was set for a conflict that would engulf the world. On the Western Front, a new kind of warfare took root. Deep within the earth, soldiers huddled in trenches, hemmed in by walls of mud and the constant threat of enemy fire. These trenches, zigzagging for hundreds of miles, were the stage of a brutal standoff that lasted for years. The conditions were beyond harsh. Soldiers battled not just the enemy, but also the elements, chilling winds, torrential rains, and an unending sea of mud that clung to everything it touched. Then, there were the gas attacks. Clouds of poison transformed the air into a deadly weapon, adding an unseen terror to the already horrific landscape. Above ground, the relentless pounding of artillery echoed day and night, a grim reminder of the war that raged around them. The sounds, the fear, the desperation. It was a ceaseless assault on the senses. The Western Front became a chilling testament to the horror of war. While the Western Front stagnated, the Eastern Front saw vast battles and shifting lines. Here, the war was fluid, unpredictable, marked by sweeping maneuvers and drastic changes in control. The vast plains of Eastern Europe set the stage for monumental battles such as Tannenberg and Masurian Lakes, where the German and Austro-Hungarian forces clashed with the Russian army. But the war was not contained to Europe. It spread its tendrils across the globe, drawing in nations far removed from the initial conflict. From the deserts of the Middle East to the jungles of Africa, from the Pacific Islands to the Americas, the war had a reach like none before. Countries from Asia, Africa, and the Americas were pulled into the maelstrom, either through colonial ties or strategic alliances. This was not just a European war. This was a world war. By the end of 1914, the first year of the war, the world was entangled in a conflict of unprecedented scale. World War I had become a truly global conflict. The war was not confined to land alone. The waters of our world played host to a silent yet critical theater of conflict, the naval power play. The unforgiving seas bore witness to epic battles, where ironclad behemoths clashed in a deadly ballet of firepower and strategy. The Battle of Jutland stands as a prime example, epitomizing the might of seafaring nations. Yet, the importance of naval warfare extended beyond these direct confrontations. The seas were the lifeblood of nations, the arteries through which vital supplies flowed. Control of these supply lines could mean the difference between victory and defeat. The silent hunters of the deep, the submarines, added a new dimension to warfare, posing a significant threat to these lifelines. As the war raged on, the influence of naval power became increasingly apparent. The outcome of the war at sea had profound consequences on the overall conflict. Back home, societies were undergoing transformative changes. The war's ripples extended far beyond the front lines, into the very heart of communities. Women, traditionally relegated to domestic roles, stepped into the shoes of men, taking on jobs in factories, offices, and farms, effectively becoming the backbone of the home front. This shift wasn't just about filling vacancies left by men. It was a monumental stride in the long march towards gender equality. Economies, too, were in flux. The gears of industry were repurposed to meet the demands of war, producing ammunition, uniforms, and equipment at a staggering pace. But it wasn't all about production and progress. Families across the world faced unprecedented challenges. The absence of fathers, sons, and brothers created a void that was felt in every corner of society. The home front was a battlefield of its own, grappling with a myriad of changes. As the guns fell silent, the world sought a path to lasting peace. Emerging from the ashes of the Great War, the Treaty of Versailles took center stage. This significant pact, signed in the grandeur of the Palace of Versailles, aimed to rebuild a world torn apart by conflict. Yet it was not without controversy. Its terms were harsh, particularly for Germany, burdening it with hefty reparations and territorial losses. Many saw it as a vengeful peace, a punishment rather than a pathway to reconciliation. Critics argue that the treaty failed to address the root causes of the war, and instead fostered resentment and nationalistic fervor, particularly in Germany. Its impact resonated through the interwar years, influencing the geopolitical landscape and shaping the world order. The Treaty of Versailles, a controversial pact, attempted to seal the peace, but instead sowed the seeds of future conflicts. The echoes of the Great War resonated far beyond the battlefield. World War I, a conflict of immense scale and devastation, left an indelible mark on the world. Its conclusion saw the redrawing of many national borders as empires crumbled and new nations were born. The political landscape was forever altered, with ideologies such as communism and fascism taking root, forever changing the course of history. But the impact was not limited to geopolitics. Society itself was transformed. The war had brought women into the workforce in unprecedented numbers, a shift that began to reshape gender roles. Communities across the globe grappled with the grief and loss of an entire generation, their mourning shaping art, literature, and culture for decades to come. Indeed, the ripples of the Great War continue to be felt. Its lessons inform our understanding of conflict, diplomacy, and the human capacity for both destruction and resilience. The legacy of World War I continues to shape our world today. In the wake of devastation, the world sought to learn from its mistakes. The ashes of the Great War brought forth the dawn of a new era in global diplomacy. Nations, grappling with the scars of conflict, strive to prevent another catastrophe of such magnitude. The League of Nations emerged from this shared aspiration, an embodiment of the collective desire for lasting peace. It was an unprecedented experiment, a global forum where nations could air their grievances and seek peaceful resolutions. This was a time when diplomacy took center stage, as countries sought to navigate the intricate maze of international relations post-war. However, despite the best intentions, the League was fraught with challenges from its inception, struggling to exert its authority and maintain unity among its members. Yet, it laid the groundwork for the concept of international cooperation. The world was determined to prevent another global conflict. Today, we remember the sacrifices made during the Great War. Across the globe, war memorials stand as silent sentinels, their stone and bronze forms echoing the stories of those who served and fell. These memorials, scattered from the fields of Flanders to the shores of Gallipoli, bear testament to the human cost of conflict. They are places of reflection, where we can pause to honor the courage, valor, and resilience of those who face the horrors of war. In addition to these solemn structures, the world also comes together in commemorative events. The sound of bugles on Remembrance Day, the sea of red poppies, and the moments of silence all serve a profound purpose. These rituals remind us of the toll of war, not only on the soldiers at the front, but also on the families and communities left behind. We honor the sacrifices made and ensure that the stories of heroism and loss are never forgotten. Regrettably, the peace following World War I was fragile. The treaty that ended the Great War, as it was then known, was seen by many as a mere band-aid on a wound that ran far too deep. The world was left in a state of disarray, with geopolitical tensions simmering beneath the surface. Economic challenges further added to the precariousness of the situation. The war had drained the coffers of many nations, leaving economies on the brink of collapse. Unemployment soared, and inflation ran rampant, creating an environment ripe for social and political unrest. This unrest would provide fertile ground for the rise of totalitarian regimes. Leaders promising stability and strength rose to power, their ideologies often steeped in nationalism and militarism. The seeds of another global conflict had been sown. The peace was fragile, and the stage was set for another devastating conflict, World War II.